Good afternoon and welcome to the 4th Diagnostic Leadership Summit. We are now heading into the panel discussion on how digitization can optimize inventory and supply chain management to reduce the cost in the diagnostic industry. We are pleased to welcome Abhinav Kalra, Director, Supply Chain Procurement, SRL Diagnostics. Welcome, sir. Chetan Kohli, Chief Operating Officer, Genestrings Diagnostic Center Private Limited. Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Mayank Madan, Partner and Executive Director, Prognosis Laboratories. Welcome, sir. Dr. Ravi Gaur, Principal Advisor, Spice Health, SpiceJet Promoters Venture, Founder, Dr. G. Path Labs, Co-Chair, CII Delhi Chapter Health Committee, who will be the session moderator for today. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Bye.
Dr. Pankaj Shah, Chief Executive Officer, Aspira Diagnostics. Welcome, sir. And Dr. Dhananjay Singh Rajput, Head of Procurement, Aster Clinical Labs LLP. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
I now hand over the session to Dr. Ravi Gaur to take the discussion forward. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think let me first thank Elets, the organizers, for this fourth Diagnostic Leadership Summit. This is, I think, a series of summit, and I've been through the past summits, and I've been participating in these, many of them. So probably the place at the right time, because they're really covering a lot of topics which are now come out in limelight, and especially after the COVID, because the diagnostic has come into the center stage, and all of us has faced. I think all of you are a leading diagnostic provider. We have faced the uncertainty. We really don't know what's going to happen, and especially with the supply chain, because when the lockdown, and I'm sure all of you probably must have been like scratching your head and how to make sure the labs remain functional, especially during the COVID time. And of course, the pressure which comes from the government, like you have to reduce the price, reduce that price, reduce the price. And so I think that kept all of us going. I think many of people who were locked down at home were working, but I think healthcare guys and diagnostics were really working more than 24 hours a day to make sure the systems are up. I think with this, I welcome all of you, all the esteemed panelists, and you have a wide experience of what what's really happening in diagnostics. So today we will be touching about in this session about how digitization can optimize inventory and supply chain management and reduce the cost of diagnostic. I think that's the most talked about this session, because everybody talking about affordable, accessible healthcare. So and of course, I always say add on quality to it, because it's not affordable means the cost, it has to be down, and accessible means like you have to have a doorstep service. So maybe you're having a big hospital next door, but you can't assess that because it's not affordable. And of course, without compromise in the quality, if the quality is bad, you will not be able to. So I think inventory, the logistic, the management, procurement, I think, and the optimization and systems and function plays a very, very important role, because the major expense what we have today in our diagnostic is our the procurement and the supply chain expense. So that's something what we'll be entering and discussing today. So as we move forward, I have gone through conventional journeys in the past, because I've seen the conventional labs where we had to have manual ledgers and books. I come from an army background. Way back in 84, 85, we were up in Siachen in Ladakh. We had big ledgers and registers probably in the labs and the storerooms, and every entry was printed and manually. So those were like the time from where we have come today, where I think we're talking about paperless technology, and so a lot of challenges. So we were actually getting the many of these smaller labs, and all of us probably are getting up against this the antiquated system, which has led probably affected the quality of patient care and widespread wastage which was there. And today's automation solutions come with real money and time savings. I think that's what we're talking about. And new age labs are automating the supply chain to alleviate the staff frustration, because maintenance of documents manual is a big challenge. And the last minute orders which come to all of you, and without and you can't stop the patient testing has to carry on. So how to address that issue, and we ultimately help the health systems to prepare for the future. And as supply chains achieve greater clinical integration than the past, there's more room for improvement and value add. And automation of supply chain processes is key to, I think, mitigate that frustration and improving data collection and processes. And that's where I think we will be talking about today. So human error is one of the biggest cause of stock issues. I am sure all of you will agree with that. Certainly, we have understocking or we are overstocking. We really don't know what's happened. But automation technology does not make mistakes, I think. In fact, if it is rightly used, of course, if it is not understood well, then it can create havoc in any case. In fact, automation is probably so accurate when it conducts the first process, it is when it conducts the 1,000 process, because this is all reproducible tested. So if you have a right automation, probably you can deliver the right results. It saves money, space, and resources. As a result, considering all the benefits we have covered, we are seeing today's automation solution come with the real money and the time savings. With this, probably I will move on to my the panelists today, and asking without wasting much of time. The first question. My first question is to Abhinav. I think Abhinav, welcome to the discussion, and
Thank you,
the
Dr. Gaur.
pleasure to be here. I think you are into heading probably the one of the biggest lab at the, I think, global lab, probably I'll say that way. And you have very small lab in the remote part of the country, and we have the largest lab in the biggest city of the country, or the maybe globally across many places. So I think you probably have a very big role and responsibility. So I'd like to understand from you, the actual role of inventory and supply management in pathology labs, which is I think your view, please. How important is inventory and supply chain management in today's lab, and the way we are expanding, the way diagnostic even center stage, and the need of diagnostic is growing. Abhinav, please.
Thank you, Dr. Gaur. Uh, I have three simple answers to this. One is a one word, one is a one line, and one is a little more elaborate one. One word answer, which I would actually give to the importance of inventory supply chain, is tremendous. It's a one word answer. If you want a one line answer, I'll say it is like the electricity which actually runs through, which makes a computer a computer. It runs everything. Without electricity, there is nothing. And if I actually would come down to a little more detailed answer, I think it's one of really and truly something which specifically cuts across almost every department of the organization. And it actually is the one which speaks to the true goal of an organization, which is, generating shareholder value. That is, in a sense, the outcome of any private concern. So if you really look at procurement, and if you look at inventory and what we need to get, so what to get, where to get, timely, all of that, this actually cuts across all the three phases of a diagnostic life cycle, which is pre-analytical, which is analytical, and post-analytical. So fundamentally speaking, pre-analytical obviously is customer comes, goes to a center, everything gets collected, but all that you need, all the things which you need, for the sample to be collected are there. That sort of stock inventory is already there, those pre-analytical consumables. Obviously, there is an element of transportation and logistics, which I'm not touching right now. But when it enters the lab, all the reagents and chemicals, availability, equipment, all of that is there. And post-analytical, obviously, it has to happen. But really, if I were to actually, put a crux into the real importance of this function within the organization, three or four things actually come to mind. One, it actually impacts the financial aspects of the organization, and significantly and directly. It impacts the EBITDA. EBITDA obviously is a valuation, is a daily KRA conversation. It's a daily story, but it also impacts the balance sheet where it touches the cash flow. it takes a control or a hit on your working capital. If you have two more or two less of it, it drives the entire thing. It certainly drives your revenue cycle, because without reagents, anything, until the patient sample is processed and reports are released, the revenue cycle isn't achieved. So certainly the financial aspect. Certainly the aspect of operations and efficiency is, it cuts through all of it. It's just like, it matching of excess and deficit centers, stocks, managing wastages which actually happen, managing expiry, ensuring that what we are consuming is actually within the right boundaries. What we need to consume, are we going off track? So, once again, if I come back to the word operations and efficiency, that's another aspect. Financial, anyways, I've told you. And it really also actually starts impacting at a very strategic level. Because in the end, if what you, the reason for the existence of the lab is to deliver accurate, timely diagnostics to the customer. If all that you are doing, all which I said above, is actually contributing that a customer is happy, that he gets the report on time, it is actually contributing to the fact that you're generating business, you're retaining your customer, you're building long-term relationships. It helps you build, differentiation and USPs in the market. Long story short, it not only helps to ensure that you do business, it helps to ensure you do business profitably. It actually ensures that you grow when you do business profitability, and it actually drives culture in the organization. I mean, long story short, it's damn essential to the entire organization. Dr. Gaur, I think you're on mute.
I said, thank you so much, Abhinav, for sharing that. And I think you touched upon a very relevant and most important crux, actually. It affects every corner. Because I think that's something we talk about today. Everywhere, every part of the lab or diagnostic, whether it is out in the field from home collection or the collection centers, or it's the analytical phase, even the post-analytical phases, because how do the reports are, reaches, printed, delivered. I think everywhere, I think probably you have a very strong role to play. I will say that I, being a pathologist, when they talk about, we are the people behind the clinicians to, for their diagnosis, helping them out, giving the direction, because we are probably behind the microscopes, and now we're coming forward in any case a little while. But these supply chain inventory people, I think you people are, I think, behind us. And without your support, probably, nothing will move, to be very frank. If you raise your hands, if you don't supply it in hand, if the quality is not good, the timely is not, the inventory is not updated, I think we will be doing nothing. Probably won't be able to deliver what we're talking about. So I think, needless to say, it's a very, very important, I think, the core crust or heart of probably the labs, and which is where I think today we need to really focus on the automation, because I think everything has to be popped up alert here, and right in front of you, you being a head, you should really be having a corporate dashboard in front of you, which says that this is what is happening, and you're aware round the clock with the chain going up. I think you have probably more than 300 odd labs across here and there, and otherwise you will go mad. You won't be able to handle it. So I think that's exactly, and 400 labs, probably some 1,500 items, probably. Even imagine that. I think this is going to be a very big problem, I think. So
I think the right
coming
point
back,
is that it's not a function in the background. It's truly, it actually is driving organizational strategy and differentiation for all labs today. So yeah.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. You are actually the backbone out there, because I think it's right. Okay. Thank you so much. And I think from this, I'll come back to the second order question. I'll move on to, the next question to me is from me, the Mayank. I think you are there. I think I'd like to ask you the next question. Mayank, are you there, Mayank? Okay. Mayank, I think my first question is, how are you currently managing? You have some chain of labs, and how are you currently managing your inventory and supply chain? And where do you feel that, this is how you manage, and what are the areas you feel that area needs improvement and focus? Can you share your views, please, Mayank? I can't hear you. We can't hear you, Mayank. You're on a mute, I think.
Mayank, you may want to go on settings and just select the audio setting. Maybe just check which microphone is being used.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Gaur, for having me over, and welcome to all the esteemed panelists around. I would frame my answers in then, now, and what could be, or what we are in the process of doing, because
I think you're talking about kal, aaj, or kal type, right? Nice to hear that. Come on.
Because we have had a lineage, and our growth warrants us to make necessary changes every now and then. And I would like to focus the answer towards automation, which is what the aim of the discussion today is. So, sir, as the owner of a self-funded startup, at the outset, the basic tenet is to do everything yourself. You feel that you are the ones who are setting up systems, you know them the best, and doing them yourself will get the best results out of everything. So up until say a couple of years or 4 years back, everything was absolutely manual. We knew the kind of costing that incurred. We knew the tentative pricings that we had signed in for. We knew the kind of consumption patterns that existed. We understood the cyclical nature of the industry, and we used to adapt ourselves accordingly. Without automation, there are definite lacunae that exist in the system, and they always will. But the funny side of automation, sir, is that yes, it does help you save time, money, and effort, but only if any of these are at a premium. So at the outset, if you feel that the 24 hours that you have in a day are worth investing in everything to do that, and then at one point in time you realize that skills have gone up, and your time and efforts are required as other areas and other aspects, and that is where you start searching for someone to hand over these responsibilities to. Now that someone could be a person or could be automation. There are options available for both now. Automation is now is inherent and is being widely accepted across the globe, not just in diagnostics but in every sector. So we also moved on to an Excel model-based platform, which started evaluating the inventories and the supply chains across the labs. We developed in-house procurement modules. We developed in-house receiving modules. We developed an interaction between the store and the accounts, which I feel personally is a very important aspect, so that both of them need to be on the same page to understand what we have actually received versus what we actually ordered, and what needs to be paid. The payments need to be on time, and the payments need to be for what we have received and not what we have ordered. So these are the kind of errors that exist in the sector, that in every procurement cycle that we try to eliminate. At one point in time, we started realizing that knowledge is no longer power supreme, but accessible knowledge is something that matters more. That is when the thought of automating the supply chain and inventory, came in. I've been a very big proponent of automation. I've tried to incorporate automation into every aspect of our laboratory system. So this also was one very important parameter that we tried to automate. Automation, sir, is a very lucrative, luring sort of a idea, because the results are right out there. They're visible, and when you see things happening on their own, it's a good feeling. It's a very good feeling. But the charm is so luring of automating things is that you end up you stop realizing that you're in the diagnostic business and not in automating diagnostic. And that is where companies such as Credio Health come in and offer us solutions that we could possibly just envisage and not even enumerate, because this is our understanding. You have certain ideas that you want incorporated in your systems, but these companies have had wide exposure with multiple partners. They've learned from various areas. They have these insights that they offer. And with these insights, you build a more robust automation platform. Uh, the areas of improvement that you mentioned, sir, since we are now working towards automating our entire inventory and supply chain model, there are a few that are documented. And then I would like to hint upon something that not just us, but the entire globe is working towards, which is supply chain 4.0. At our level, we are now looking at automating all the various aspects of inventory and supply chain, starting from ordering of of products. There could be various automations in the ordering aspect, in receiving products, in having a multi-layered consumption analysis between the various stakeholders. The product reaches the store, and then there is the floor stock, and then there is the consumption analysis using the machines and using the lab information systems, the amount of products that are in transit, the amount of products that have been sanctioned and are yet to reach places. So this cycle is something that automation will be helping us very soon the moment we incorporate all these features that we are trying to incorporate. Along with this, it does help in other peripherals also, which is price comparisons. Like you rightly pointed out, for Mr. Abhinav, having multiple labs and each lab requiring 1,500 products, and every product being available in 500 brands and every brand having a different price, evaluating everything at the outset is very difficult if you do not have IT to help you with it. So that is something that softwares help us. There are graphical interpretations that help you analyze your stock, that help you analyze your efficiencies, that allow you a variable, safety stock rather than a fixed safety stock that most of the companies usually go in for, and so on and so forth. On a larger perspective, the growth or the areas of improvement, if I can mention, is something that supply chain 4.0 covers, which is a part of the bigger, larger industry 4.0 tenet that the world is planning to adopt. When Amazon can launch an unmanned, setup and manage it well also, the sky is the limit for how automation can help any industry. So the scope of improvement is huge, sir. And there are 5 or 6 basic aspects where supply chain 4.0 wants to improve. Starting from the aim of supply chain 4.0 is to make the supply chain faster, to make it more flexible, to make it more accurate, to make it more efficient, and to make it more granular. Now, we can go into details about every aspect of this, but I believe that these are all areas that every automation will be working towards, and we hope to gain from shared minds.
Thank you, Mayank. I think you really listed out end to end, and it was, I think, very, very important areas of improvement, how we are working on and what are you looking for. I think one of the important, probably the thing what we can probably work out here is the real-time tracking, especially this is what really happened into COVID time, because we were not sure about our numbers, because we had 1,000 samples, I think, and tomorrow we were ready for 1,000, probably we have a 200 sample, and suddenly next third day we have 5,000 samples. Now, I think one of the most important the thought process which come from there is real-time tracking, and how do you plan your inventory, and how do you make sure that the supplies are at the right place, in the right lab at the right time, and without getting affected. I think we'll come back to you, because on some of the things we will talking about the consumption pattern, the CPRT. I think that's very, very important area. I'll come back to you for the next round of question. From here, I move to Pankaj. Dr. Pankaj. Pankaj is I think I'd like to hear from you. The procurement is a very important function of any lab. In any case, goes without saying, because without that, I think it's like a lifeline. We breathe on that. What system as a standalone can you allow follow, and how does it differ from chain of labs today? Can you just give an insight? One single lab, suppose you have, and if you have a chain of labs, you have experience on all the front. Let us know about it, Dr. Pankaj.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ravi. Thanks for organizers for inviting me on this panel. Procurement. I started my practice in 1986, I started with colorimeter, then semi-automated, then fully automated, random access, batch analyzer, and then I have a track system. So I have seen a whole gamut of different machines, and I agree with you, Dr. Ravi. When I started, I had a lot of paperwork and all those things. This digitization has really helped us in avoiding those paperwork. Uh, Now for procurement, I would just for a laboratory, reagent is not only the procurement. Procurement starts from right from pre-analytical, analytical, and post-analytical. So pre-analytical, you have everybody now has a barcode readers and barcode printers and tubes and all those things are so and for reagents is second, and third is the papers for reports. But that part, post-analytical part, I think all of us have reduced the cost because of digitalization. Because everybody now expects on email or WhatsApp or whatever various ways we deliver the reports. For standalone lab, I would say I was a standalone lab. Now I have two HLMs and 13 collection centers and all those things. So when I was having a standalone lab, it was very easy to manage because everything was at under one roof, processing also at one place, collection also at one place. So things were little easy. So it was easy to keep inventories and everything was easier. Now when we started expanding, so in expansion there are so many other supply chains and everything, inventory and stock has to be maintained. Plus, as your menu goes up, we were small laboratory, then grown up to medium, and now we are in between medium and large laboratory. So procurement, as time went, procurement was a really challenge for us. And in this procurement, since I have elaborated that we have the difference between I would say small lab and or standalone lab. Standalone lab only issue is you don't get proper rates in reagents because you have a limited resources, you have limited funds, you cannot buy in bulk. But when we have grown from small to medium, now we also have a lot of due to our workload, now we can also compete with pricing and all those things. So this is how. So first, for any lab to procure things, so there are two things. One is machines, and second is reagents. So you have to first know your workload. How much is your workload? Depending on that, you have to procure the reagents and material and machines. Plus, we also have to foresee how, weather related, seasonal. Like in monsoon season, we know that more of a. So we have to predict that monsoon is approaching. So we would require those dengue and leptospira, chikungunya, all those. So those we used to procure in time, and of course, expiry is also one of the challenge. So you have to store according to your requirement only.
Dr. Gaur, you're on mute.
Thank you, Dr. Pankaj. I think your experience matters, and that's something which is like we're saying, from starting from a handmade register to today, everything is happening on the digital space, and we really don't have to really probably work out. And there, of course, the fully automation software is coming out now, helping us out so that we have a more productive time at our hand, and we get more focused and probably get best out of the value out of our labs, and probably the pressure which is today in everybody offers how to make the cost of tests lesser and lesser. But that's a growing competition. That's definitely need of the country, and probably everybody wants the diagnostics at a cheaper rate. I don't know whether it's how viable and feasible in long run it'll be, but where will compromise. But I think what best we can do is probably if you optimize our procurement, automate as much as possible, and make sure that you have the best of deals and best of procurement, best of vendor management. Probably somewhere you can contribute much better to the bottom line of the labs. Thank you. We'll get back to you on a thing. I think with this, I move on to Chetan. Chetan, welcome to the discussion. And you have been, I think, in the right, the space of the COVID. I think you're doing something which is a phenomenal work, and especially the not only your COVID testing, but the airports and all across. You have a wide experience. You've done, especially for the molecular testing, and when it comes to the molecular pathology. My personal question will be to the molecular, limiting because the molecular pathology. Molecular pathology is growing, demand is growing, expectations are growing. More and more tests are going to come in the PCR format, and I think maybe NGS and much more as we move forward. This is a very big challenge in the molecular biology, because I think how do you manage your stock in the molecular biology? There may be some lab developed tests also, because dilutions are happening. So I think probably we'd like to hear share your experience, what your wisdom. What are the challenges and how automation can help, especially in the molecular pathology lab, and benefit, because every single microliter or milliliter of reagent is very expensive in molecular.
Right. Yeah.
Chetan, please.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Gaur, and thank you to the organizers to have me on the panel. I think as an organization, we are probably the youngest amongst all the dignitaries on the panel here, and I think one thing that I was hearing you telling your experience from starting from the army forces, and Dr. Pankaj sharing his experience from 1986. I think I can probably say that we covered that entire decades of journey in a couple of months. When the pivot happened from our existing businesses towards diagnostic at the start of the pandemic, because that is what it was for us. While we always had a niche in molecular testing and a core area of expertise being NGS, wherein we were doing a lot of academic research, even for ICMR and others. But testing on a mass level, testing on a consumer level was never one of the things that we focused on. We were focusing on the hospitals and the chain of IVF clinics and things like that. So I think we started from a paper to automation within those couple of months, and I feel that we've covered that decades and decades of journey in those couple of months. So yeah, it's been great and feels good to be part of the dignitaries here. Now coming to molecular, as you rightly said, not only is it technically more elaborate, but the cost of goods is very, very expensive, and which is where a robust, a strong inventory management and a supply chain management comes into play. Also, I think what small and medium-sized organizations like us will, do face a challenge is that we don't have those high throughputs to support, or not to face a challenge in wastage for that matter. So when there's a high cost of goods, there is already, less volume. These are very expensive tests for that matter. So wastage, expiry, all those things keep on adding to your costs, and which is why probably we see very few labs entering this space even today. You can probably count them on your fingers, which is why I think, and as Abhinavji as well might agree, the management has to really focus on supply chain as being a forefront rather than just being a support service. In fact, what I feel is that the management should be the supporting function to supply chain rather than being the other way around. Now you asked me about lab-grown tests. So, while we don't do a lot of lab-developed tests, however, for our research, for academics, we had to do, and I think the key there is the dilutions that happened. And for me, however, when it comes to lab-developed tests, I would rather focus on being it error-free because of the protocols and validation than inventory. So inventory will come second over there, but being it error-free, and I think to make it error-free, automation can play a huge role. a small lab with less volume cannot really focus on or cannot really afford to have the liquid management systems like Hamilton, for that matter. In fact, I don't know if I've seen a Hamilton at work in India, at least not in Delhi. So, so I mean, we started with an Excel-based spreadsheet based, as Mayank ji also said. So that is where the protocols were laid out, and we started with the Excel-based. Then, obviously, there are certain online calculators that are available. Again, it's a function of macros. You can develop them on a simple Excel as well. Uh, Else, I mean, for a higher throughput, there is no other format than moving to a liquid management system like a Hamilton or a Agilent, maybe. So I think that's where it is. But overall, I think the challenges are same in molecular and pathology, just that the cost of goods is slightly higher. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think, Chetan, I think you were correctly said that what we covered in 30 years, you covered in 3 years. And that's a fact, the ground reality. And I think a lot of learning that which shows like that is what we were talking about. What I was talking in, one of the events some time back, had we, what we have done in the COVID, the diagnosis, treatment and handling COVID, so much of collaborated effort with everybody
Okay.
who's putting together, whether it's supply chain or diagnostics or the vendor supply, reagent manufacturer, scientists or policymakers, everybody for that matter.
Yeah.
They all came together. There's a public-private partnership. The information technology, IT did a wonderful job here. And, like if this was done for tuberculosis in the past, I think we wouldn't have been facing either this thing in TB. For 30 years, we've been fighting about this 30. Did not be eradicate TB. Control, even if we don't know really what exactly the numbers are still today. I think that is the kind of a thing, something which is a great learning from, I think, and we all can apply and move forward. That's something which is 3 years of learning, and I think over 3 decades, that really makes a difference. And that's something that means it is doable, provided we do together and make sure we use the right technology. Thank you, Chetan. I think I'll come back to you. And I think from this, I will move on to my next question is to Dhananjay. Dhananjay, you have, you come from Aster, and Aster is, of course, very known hospital groups, but I think they are now more into entering the diagnostics, the late entry. But of course, I'm sure they have a hospital, and the hospital management is already exists. My questions are, the lab functions are very, very complicated, and all of you know about it. And in fact, right, Chetan and now everybody is talking about, the management actually lives on your support, because this is something, they are the one who would, to be very frank, driving the bottom line, revenue, and of course, the supply line. Because without them, nothing really, they have to be given a due importance, come what may. They know the operation systems very well, because there's something good of the procurement and supply chain heads. They know, in fact, much better in operation how things are functioning. Now, I think the lab functions are very complicated, and every test has its own recipe if you look at this. In such a scenario, how do you calculate your cost per test or CPRT? And that's which this is. Do you think there's an area of improvement or some data analytic can help? And do you think some kind of automation can help? And how much can it work around? Dhananjay, please.
Yeah, so Dr. Ravi, thank you for the question, and thank you organizers for welcoming me with the great panel. All of you are like, way more than senior to me. So I'm really obliged to be part of this discussion. So, sir, you rightly said Aster currently is having 12 hospitals, out of which 8 hospitals are currently under Aster Clinical Lab. So the way you said, my previous experience was into handling the core hospital procurement. So when I step into the lab, then I realized a dramatic shift when you switch into the diagnostic chain. So with the hub and spoke model, and multiple new labs coming up, already existing HLMs that you have to handle, the contracts are already in place. You have Italica, you have somewhere Roche. So in all these scenarios, there was very little scope of reinventing the wheel. But yes, as a procurer, what one should look into particularly is that the first thing is first, at each HLMs or at each lab, what are your top 20 and bottom 10 test parameters? That is the first thing that one should highlight. Second thing it should come is the reagent cost. What is your existing reagent cost? The next thing it comes at the throughput. That is the as per the package, what is the throughput that test parameter is giving? And the next thing comes is the most vital part is onboard stability of that reagent or a control. So the moment you articulate all these three, four parameters, and of course the fifth one is your workload, because if it is your existing HLM, you will know your workload also. So the moment you do a very small function in even Excel, you will get to know what is the right CPT for your particular parameter. And yes, I do agree that there is a huge scope for analytics in this, because it's just not about whether your commitments are being met on a per monthly basis or not. The main thing where the key role analytics can bring in that, the moment you are running or shooting over the volumes which you were anticipating, there is the right scope where you can get back to the vendors, you can ask for the better rates in the controls, you can also look into the minute part of the onboard stability of these controls and reagents. So this way I feel that automation has a huge scope in bringing down the operational cost, because this work can actually strengthen the arms of your operational guys. That's what I feel, and can improve your bottom line.
Yeah, I think very importantly, you enumerated couple of all these factors, which is a part of your CPR, CPT or CPR, CPT. I'll say that. But I think many automation probably will also cover, like, helping out when you talk about the how many QCs, how many samples you run the quality control, what are the calibrations the region use in that, what does, and you can, these are indicators, probably, what we talk about repeat sample once, because sometimes you have, how many samples are done repeated because of the actual requirement, or it could be because of the machine failure, then the sample rejected for certain reasons. Of course, onboard stability you already mentioned, and I think all the residual volume, and I think everything today can be automated, to be very frank. And I think once you have the full automated recipe, which is fully automated, although then probably you'll be able to have the right kind of the CPT. Otherwise, we just go to approximate, the 98% or 95%, probably 1 or 2% is missing, and that's exactly the 1 or 2% contribute to your bottom line. And that's what is, I think, today, because the margins are being thinning out day by day, overheads expanding, but this is the other things are the things, manpower, cost, and this is the only probably you can say that the diagnostic in the industry, healthcare costs are expanding, growing up, but the MRPs for last, I think, 7, 8, 9 years has not gone up. Probably they have gone down, I think, for us. I think it's so important for us to have this information on a CPT and arrive at the right kind of a CPRT. Otherwise, you will never be able to, answer what Abhinav was saying, because you're responsible for answering to your promoters and the holders, like, where is my bottom line gone? What are you doing about it? I think that's something which is very important. We don't have Deepak now on the board. I think I'll come back to Abhinav again. We restart the same circle. You probably, you again, I come back because you have, I think, 300, 400 kind of a labs, and all sizes of lab. Somewhere you have a small semi-automation, somewhere you're fully automated, absolutely tracks kind of a things are there with you. Somewhere the mixture of both kind of a thing. This is a absolutely mess out there when you come to the lab system, because there's everything what it is there. Now, how do you keep a track? I think I'm sure it must be like, pulling your hair out of, how do you keep a track of inventory, and and to ensure the minimum disruption of services. Otherwise, it's really impossible task. I think I'll probably your experience, your inputs will help. And over to you, Abhinav, please.
Thank you, Dr. Gaur. While I will give a good answer to this, one of the facts is that, within the organization where I work for, we've transgressed from, let's say, a relatively smaller scale into a larger scale. And therefore, with the onset of time, we've invested in a system-wide ERP software. Now, the reality is that with 400 plus labs running, and I'm just stating where we are today, and here is where we are monitoring. So the intention is not to say start with an ERP. The intention is to say that whatever functionalities I'm just going to share, use the tool which can at the right price point within your EBITDA and your scale and your sustainability solve it. Use that. My recommendations are never for a specific tool. They're for the features or the functionalities which the tool can offer. So if I have to about, except in one state of the country, we have about 400 labs spread out. The way I do it is, I mean, I'll tell you very crisply. So we actually have a centralized algorithm for demand forecasting or whatever orders we need to generate. Then we have a decentralized ordering system within the ERP at every individual lab, and they take cues from the central forecast which come out. Now, so that was centralized forecasting. Then there is decentralized punching in of a purchase requisition within the software. Then there is centralized purchase order making. So in this part, so I'm just also sharing what is centralized, what gets decentralized. So when there is centralized purchase order makings, subsequently, then there are decentralized deliveries to the lab locations. Post that, since the deliveries happen decentralized, the GRN and actually has to happen at the individual labs. So there is decentralized GRN happening in the ERP system. And obviously, since this is a purchasing activity, but when consumption has to be booked, it's done at a frequency of every week by every lab, every section diligently. So that gets booked in SAP once again. In order to run this entire cycle, we run centralized analytics. So to run analytics, I would run days of inventory, what is expired stock, what is near to expiry stock, aging, all of that. So we done that centrally. Finally, if you're doing all of this story together, you patch all of this together, you'll figure out that sitting in a central location, you're actually able to monitor and run a system to the chaos all around. Once you do all of that, uh, in the end, you'll actually realize that once you have a control, there is so many other elements which you need to integrate with your software. So one part is this is regular stuff. Then there is a proactive element to the software. It could be you want to run analytics on pilferage, you want to run analytics on consumption, what you're doing. You want to actually move out of your own organization and integrate with the ERPs of your suppliers. So it could be a JIT sort of thing also. Eventually, you also want to get into your analyzer performance, what is happening, what is not happening. And this is how you start looking at all the operational metrics, start looking at how the consumptions and the flows and the inventories are all across the company. You don't even have to go outside your company. You can actually start doing an intra-lab analysis within your organization. You can start setting benchmarks and eventually let the power of automation harness all of it and give you a method to the madness. That's fundamentally how is how it is rationally possible to monitor and measure everything without actually pulling my hair out. So that's really one of the core things which we do.
Okay.
I hope that
Thank,
helps.
yeah, thank you, Abhinav. I think this is really sharing much details, and I'm sure a lot of our, the audience are people who are hearing about it and probably keep hearing. They will understand, like it's centralized and decentralized concept. That's, I think, very very useful to, I think, many of us, and many of us will be learning from that. Thank you so much. I just move on. My next question again. I think I'll come back to you, Mayank. Although you have listed a lot of things, I just need about in 2 minutes something about you talk about. If you really have to give a inventory software, what is the inventory software? What will be a sell and, like 5 or 6 important things you like to see in inventory software, which is mandatory point of view. Mayank, please.
Right, sir. If I will, if you allow me, I will just like to answer this in two aspects. Give you 5 pointers on what are the immediate requirements that I feel, and maybe 3 on what I feel software should be doing eventually in the time to come. As of now, the pressing requirement that I can enlist is the software should allow us automation in ordering. There are various aspects covered in that. It should allow us automation in receiving goods, in interacting or integrating or interfacing the softwares with the accounting softwares to ensure uniformity. It should offer a multi-layered consumption tracking, as I mentioned earlier, also between the various stakeholders, the stocks in transit, the stocks that are being sanctioned on the machines, on the floor, in the store, wherever. One thing that I feel that software should include right now is inventory storage methods that not too many softwares have. I would just like to quote. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the Pink Panther movie, but Inspector Jacques Clouseau's unique system of cross-referencing uh, is a glaring example of how important it is to know what is placed where, and software can help us with that. So these 4 or 5 pointers is something that I feel a software should provide at the outset. Uh, on a long-term view, a long-term perspective, there are three things that software ideally should be extending, and that is where supply chain is also moving. The first important aspect is supply chain cloud, which is a collaboration between the customers, the labs, or the companies, and and the suppliers. So if all of them are brought on the same platform, are able to share their minds, are able to share admin costs, are able to leverage best practices and learn from each other. That is what softwares and IT and the web in general has to offer. So that is something that I'm sure startups are coming in and will be extending eventually. Second thing that is already existing in the industry but not in diagnostics is supply chain as a service. The concept of extending supply chain as a service on a SaaS-based model. Moglix, if I can name one such company, is one of our latest unicorns, which became one in a short span of 6 years, and is into the model of extending supply chain as a service to manufacturing right now, not to diagnostics. But I'm sure with people like these coming in, there will be other minds, sharper minds that will be launching some such products for the diagnostic sector also. We would love to have some such thing in the software realm. And I am a very strong proponent of focusing on core competencies and outsourcing allied services. So, this particular model of supply chain as a service is something that would be more than welcome. What it does is, despite the fact that there are standalone laboratories and there are laboratories like Abhinav sir's 400 lab large conglomerate, this particular service is able to extend benefit to people all across the realm. Depending on how much you can pay, you can expect services. And then lastly, this would be probably a little more futuristic, but if you can imagine a software that can categorically mention point number one, the amount of time and manpower saved in doing something. If it can categorically tell you that by virtue of using this software, you have saved these many man hours and you saved this much time. And secondly, if it can categorically mention the cost benefit availed by virtue of connecting you to multiple vendors and exposing you to the options available in the industry. Dr. Pankaj also mentioned about the problem of price variations that take the industry. So the software or IT or automation in general can definitely take care of all these aspects,
Yeah, I think
assuming.
Mayank, we'll get back to you. Get back to you. I think we have a vendor kind of a thing discussion. I think a very important part you mentioned. But I think have to interrupt you. Sorry for the little timings are short. We have to hear the other two panelists also. But I think one important part right here is because one thing, of course, you mentioned almost all the ideal features. One of the things what we use is a lot of consumable material which goes out of the field actually because we have a collection center network, franchisee network, and all kind of network. Probably in my experience, I have seen probably 70% and 75% samples come, 25% goes out. We don't know where it is gone. Probably that's a fair amount of wastage if we can check back on it. Maybe that can be if coded as some kind of automation. And like if I've given you 5 ampules of 8-year tubes, I should get back 5 samples. I'm only getting 3. That's probably a lot happening when, especially for the small lab or a bigger lab, because every single rupee matters in the labs today. I think that we'll have probably, I'm sure the people who are making the software, they will like to talk about it and learn and do something new about it. I'll come back to you. I think Chetan, I think I'll probably now heading to you because when it is like uh, the 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 uncertainty what we talked about in fact in the COVID time, we just how do you address because the inventory aging because somewhere you have to have a stock for 3 weeks. Sometime this week you suddenly overshoot. What can be the best way to work it on it, Chetan? Please.
You know, like you rightly said, sir, during COVID, obviously the uncertainty around stock availability, stockouts at the distributor or a manufacturer level happened a lot. We saw that at in the initial phase. We saw it during the second wave. So yes, that uncertainty was massive. Uh, and while it was unique to the pandemic, wherein the availability was a concern rather than intelligent ordering, which obviously a supply chain tool could have helped, is unique to it. However, there are lessons that we could have learned and we should learn from it. Uh, Having said that, especially when our operations at the airport, while a city lab and our own city lab, I could have, probably halted operations for 1 or 2 days or for whatever period. Airport is an operation you just could not hold. That disruption in services would be catastrophic, not just for us as an organization, but for the country overall, because we're talking about an international airport. So I think there was a time when we were even keeping 30 days worth of stock. My lab was smaller and my storage facility was much larger. Uh, while it should be the other way around with intelligent supply chain management. So we have seen those times, and I think the key lesson there to learn is that uh, using a supply chain software, using a tool, wherein you can start evaluating your wastage, as you rightly said, start evaluating your. Uh, Another unique thing we faced at the airport was a lot of theft, unfortunately. Uh, Suddenly from a scale of 20 employees, you're reaching a scale of 700 employees. There is no way on earth we could have managed the amount of theft and the leakages that were happening. And which is when we quickly learned, we asked a lot of experts in the industry, and we quickly learned that barcoding helped us there. So any sample that is going in and any sample that is going out was actually recorded. While it was as simple as a barcode scanner on an Excel, no big software there, but that was a great help in putting a checking mechanism. So I think overall, that is what the learning is from the pandemic, and uh, without automation, without technology, I don't think the future is there. It has to be the backbone, as you rightly pointed in the very beginning of the session.
Okay, I think that's very important point. I think you mentioned that. I think it's time to barcode and each and every inventory aspect, and probably you can track it. Real time tracking probably it can be done. That will like it's like some shopper shop. You go, you enter there. Every item is got a sum. Moment you take it out, it's like pick an alarm comes out. I think you have to answer that. Thank you,
So we
Chetan,
almost
for I think highlighting this issue. Is very important for the labs, especially when you have a airport labs or probably a lot of samples are flowing in and out. I think I'll have a quick next round with Dr. Pankaj. Dr. Pankaj, I think your experience because you have probably how do you handle the expiry kind of thing today? Because there are every reagent has a different expiry and every component of the recipe a different expiry. I think your inputs on that. How do you and will automation help? And what is the best way out? Dr.
Yeah,
Pankaj.
automation certainly helps. We have a stock test relationship, which helps us with auto consumption. Based on material when we receive, we put expiry date on that. So whichever goes first in is first out. So this is where we have to especially with after doing this, our reagent wastage are almost negligible. As Dr. Ravi, you rightly said, I am worried about. I have this. I know that my reagent wastage is less, but material which goes out for my collection centers and all those things, I agree with you. Almost 25% of the I cannot track those. Where those consumables have gone. So this is what and what we follow is every month we have physical stock verification also. So we have a check on both the things, and we are happy with whatever system which we have followed. It is. I'm happy
I
with
think
this.
very, very important, especially kind of the blood culture bottles. Or of course, VTMs have become cheaper now. Initially, they were expensive. Probably the PPEs and all these things and many other items, because I think those are, I think, very, very, expensive items, and they really cost a lot. And of course, you mentioned that minimal wastage. That's very nice. I think you must be. I'm keeping a day in and out of Hawkeye on what's happening inside. Otherwise, I think automation can also help when you have, from my mind, when you have multiple labs from one lab, the expiry, short expiry, you can always immediately alert comes out. You can shift it to this material to the another lab, or you can talk to your friend's lab. I have a short expiry material. Can you use it? Or then probably we can have a group clusters here and there in the zone, and probably help each other, and probably do a better add value to the lab, and probably reduce the costing. My last question now goes to Dhananjay. Dhananjay, I think we have we're just talking about multiple recipes, multiple vendors. You see, because the integration happening across vendors, because something maybe you just order and you have 50 vendors listed out there, and probably your view, please, and because that's something probably in hospital lab you will be able to do that to some extent.
Yeah, so more on the vendor to vendor side, I see this integration happening and data helping us on the platform to platform. So it helps us to give the best suitable platform for X workload, and also it suggests us that for which scale of lab, what sort of throughput of machines you should have, so that the way you said, automation can help us to analyze the wastages. So that prediction really helps us to select the right platform for the right kind of business of a lab you are looking into. So that helps a lot.
I think directly, because probably I'm looking for. Thank you so much for all the inputs from everybody. I think we have already overshot our time also. I think what I am really looking here for, probably very fully automated. I really don't have to probably have a big dashboard. Probably I know I have listed out all the vendors, real time auction happening on the online. Which reagent, what is the volume, how to procure, from where it actually comes in from my side. Probably a close integration between the suppliers, procurement guys, management guys, supply chain management person, and the lab requirements where your consumption really actually happening. Probably a fully integrated system could help us out definitely to, if nothing but 2 to 3% of our the costing, and which is actually the bottom line. It adds to the bottom line. Probably helps our cash flows. This is something which is probably a good model of supply chain or inventory management, and we don't have to have a holding for almost like some. I'm sure Chetan will agree when you talk about the molecular kind of a reagent. Sometimes the inventory aging is almost 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, because that reagent is only about 2 ml, but I think the test only come once in a month. And how do you keep track of that? Because those are rare in the testing. But keep your inventory, because that's a cash blocked right there, because that's something which is stuck. We really can't. So I think keeping your inventory aging under check, rating the right vendor pricing, probably putting together. If you have chain of labs, if you have friends of you together, 5 of you labs, independent, standalone, you can probably create a cluster out there and probably negotiate better with the vendor. This is what I'm going to do. Probably a full analytical data analysis and probably getting information together can bring down the cost. With this, I'll say thank you everybody. Thank you everybody for sparing a time, and I'll look forward for the the next maybe meeting out there in person whenever we have next event, and probably a lot of learning, and I'm sure a lot more. That I love the discussion which is going on, because this is what an operation head or a business head or the lab head is known for. Increase, only crux is increase the bottom line, improve these services, and how do you do that? It's a big challenge. Thank you so much again, and hopefully looking forward to see you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Ravi Gaur, for moderating the session so nicely. And I thank all the panelists for their insightful views on how digitization can optimize inventory and supply chain management to reduce the cost in the diagnostic industry. We would like to inform our esteemed gathering about our upcoming events, which are the 4th Pharma Leadership Summit on the 26th and 27th of April, the 3rd Radiology and Imaging Summit on 26th and 27th of May, and the Medical Education Summit on 23rd and 24th of June. We look forward for your constant support in future as well. I once again extend my warm gratitude to all our esteemed panelists for their time and presence. And please accept a small token of gratitude, Dr. Ravi Gaur, for moderating the session so nicely. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Dhananjay Singh Rajput, thank you so much, sir, for sharing your points.
Thank you.
Chetan Kohli, for your thoughts on the panel discussion. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Abhinav Kalra, for sharing your thoughtful views. Thank you, sir. Dr. Pankaj Shah, for your insightful views on the discussion. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
And Mayank Madan for his insightful views on the discussion. Thank you so much. It was great listening to all of you. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.